Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. So, I just figured I would get on here and discuss a few things. So, lately I've been seeing numbers in sequence a lot more than usual. Ever since March ended and the whole Mercury retrograde thing happened, these things seem to be happening much more often, and the universe seems to be wanting me to know that it's not just by coincidence that these things are happening. It's literally every time I pull out my phone to look at the time, it's either 1:11, 2:22, 3:33, or 4:44, 5:45. Hasn't gotten to 6:66 yet. That would get kind of weird as far as these watches work, but that's becoming a real trend lately in my life, seeing these numbers. I've been reading quite a bit on numerology and things like that and talking to people about it. I haven't completely kind of figured out what is being communicated to me, but I'm putting the intention to figure out what it is so that maybe I can not necessarily do something about it, but just kind of come to the understanding of why I'm getting these messages. I just have a tiny script here just to kind of gather my thoughts, because I'm really horrible at prioritizing like what I want to talk about and whatnot. I almost feel like a better environment for this would be like a live video, so that people can just ask me questions and I can kind of just answer with what's kind of up here in my head. But I've talked to quite a few people from various religions over the past couple months. So mainly from my background being a Christian since 2004, actually a little bit before that. I was in high school. I started going to a youth group, accepted Christ into my life in 2003, and then we had a house fire that burnt pretty much the entire house down. We lost everything, and that I guess my religion or my faith was something that really got me through that time and gave me peace, when normally humans without something to hope for would kind of probably not have that kind of peace that I had at that time. But these people I've been talking to from different religions, it's just interesting to me because I talked to a guy about a month ago that had been watching my YouTube videos, and he's originally from India, so kind of like a Hindu background in his religious life, very in tune with Ganesh or Ganesha, or however you know this entity by name. And it's just, it's crazy. The more and more I talk to these people, the more I realize that all these religions, they really lead to the same path. I mean, that's what I feel, that's my opinion. I mean, I can't say I know it for sure, I can't say I know everything, but I've seen people from, religions from all over the world throughout my time in the military. I've had the opportunity, the fortunate opportunity to be able to sit down with people of that have the religion of Islam, Muslim people. I've drank tea with them. I've went into combat with those guys, and I really don't see a difference between their ideals as far as morally and ethically than those in Christianity. So my thought is that all of these religions are correct in some form or manner, and that they're all inspired by ascended masters. So I keep calling these people ascended masters. So Christianity clearly is based off of the life of Jesus Christ and the fact that we need forgiveness and that there is a divine justice aspect that must be met. Like, it's very black and white with Christianity, and for me very much encompasses the idea of duality. There is no in between, there's no gray area, there's no wiggle room in any of this. It's either you have your golden ticket to the chocolate factory, which is you've given your life and your faith to Jesus Christ, or you're not going to the chocolate factory, you're going somewhere else. Which, depending on who you talk to in these different religious groups, they all have their idea of what may await you if you're not aligned with their religious beliefs, whether it be hell or purgatory or whatnot. But I was in jazz class today, and just another one of these moments where the universe is like, here's a message for you, bud. And I'm like, okay, because it was just glaring to me. So we're talking about this jazz musician. His name's John Coltrane. And throughout a lot of the history of jazz, mainly in the United States, a lot of it was kind of laced with kind of negative, seedy places, bad places, drug abuse, racism, all those sort of things. And this amazing saxophonist, John Coltrane, he ended up falling into the drug scene during that time, and it ultimately led him to rock bottom. Like, it put him in a really bad place, and it goes along with a lot of these, Instagram quotes that you see out there where you really, like, for a lot of people, they really need to be brought to the end of themselves or the end of their egos, or they need to be brought to rock bottom, or completely, pretty much right outside of dying physically. They need to be brought to the end of themselves in order to understand what is happening on this planet, in order for them to awaken, in order for them to ascend. And so that's what showed up in jazz class, was this word ascend on the whiteboard. And I was like, ascended, that's related to spiritual awakening, isn't it? And then I kind of mentioned it to the professor, and he's like, yeah, it is. Or at least it can be. I mean, you could apply it to anything, though. Ascended, like Lady Gaga at one point was a no-name, and she ascended to the highest point in the charts, and she became, whatever. Like, she ascended or leveled up to the highest level of her area of expertise, which would be music. So when we talk about ascended masters, we're talking about typically these religious prophets that came to the planet with something to teach, and these people or these souls or these ascended masters as we know them were very much living on planet Earth and possibly perceiving the third dimension, but within themselves they were perceiving a much higher vibrational frequency than what most of us are accustomed to perceiving in our daily lives. So these people were very awoken, as you could say. Like, they had very, they had really brought to the earth the concept of everything being connected, and the fact that we should all love each other, and there shouldn't be any hate and racism, and there shouldn't be any difference amongst us, that we should all live in harmony, and we should all forgive others, and we should ultimately, like, most importantly, from my perspective, we should forgive ourselves. The reason I say that with my experience in Christianity, I had kind of laid all my problems at God's feet. I had asked him to forgive me, and I guess at some degree I had felt that I had been forgiven, but it felt like a very superficial kind of hollow forgiveness. It didn't feel complete to me, although the faith of Christianity says that forgiveness is complete, and Christ said on the cross when he died, our pastor mentioned it last week, he said this word tetelestai, it is finished, in Hebrew. So tetelestai, when Jesus took upon him the entire race of humanity's compounded sin, like everything that you ever did in your entire life wrong, or that anyone had been essentially stacked on the shoulders of Christ, and he took our punishment for us. So I guess I've kind of always had issues with that. Mainly being, to me, it doesn't give a whole lot of purpose to us as far as coming to this planet and having a learning experience. And I mean, if so many things that you're doing are wrong, and if you do only one thing wrong, and the punishment is there for you, and the punishment is death or separation from God, as Christians will say, then, like, I don't know. It's like you have to have faith, like they say. It's a very faith-based thing. And some people, they don't find themselves in that vibration of thought, or it never comes up to them that they can have faith. It's really like, faith is just a strange thing to me. There's some videos out there on faith and religion and whether God's real or whatever, from a guy named Sadhguru. I would highly encourage anyone that's interested in this type of stuff to check him out. He's a very enlightened yogi that does talks, and he has a few organizations and whatnot that kind of preaches along the lines of this whole spiritual awakening thing that's happening on the planet. So I've kind of covered the numbers, and then I was in a store earlier, and there's this guy I know, and his little sister goes to the same bus stop as one of my daughters, and she's around the same age, and they live in our neighborhood. And so somehow spirituality kind of came up in the conversation, and he's from Yemen originally, so he has kind of his own cultural, I don't want to call it baggage, because it's what we grow up with. You know, if you're born in the United States, or if you're born in India or Mexico or Yemen or Saudi Arabia, like, experiences may vary, like, by a lot, typically. And sometimes the cultural influences in those countries will run very deeply along with the country's religious beliefs. So we discussed quite a bit about different things. And what I noticed is he was very open-minded. And I tend to see that a lot more in religions outside of Christianity, is an open-mindedness to what could be, or experiences someone else might have had based on their perception of the world, rather than just kind of that closed-minded, I already know everything type of mentality, because the moment you think you know everything is the moment that you can go ahead and call yourself ignorant, because you don't. We got into some spiritual talk about my hypnosis session, and he was telling me that he was kind of interested in hypnosis, and I gave him some information on it and whatnot. But I share pretty vocally, like, what has happened during my awakening, and I'm like, dude, I saw these light beings. I'm like, God doesn't sit on a throne. God is not this huge dude with a beard smiting everyone. So I go through and tell him, I'm like, God is pure energy. God is, you know, it's really, it's not difficult to talk about these things. It's really hard to find the words. Because when you're there, when you are in the presence of Source, the energy, or God, or the goddess, or many, whatever gods you want to call it, it is a place, or maybe it isn't a place. It's a location, if I can put like physical words to it. It's a location that has no limits. The location is infinite. It goes in every direction infinitely. And it is pure energy and pure light, and no negativity can exist there. And that experience has kind of solidified for me whether or not there is a creator, whether or not there's an afterlife. Like, I absolutely know that for sure, that there is a creator and that there's an afterlife. It may not be an afterlife we stay in for eternity. It may not be the heaven that most religions kind of are hoping to get to at the finish line, but it's definitely an experience in a place of pure positivity and a love that is unbound by these puny human brains and these bodies that we are currently living in as vehicles. And if I really, really think about it and try to describe it, the more I kind of tune myself into this energy that I experienced, it's hard for me to even make words that relate to how I felt there. Just the feeling of love was nothing like anything that anyone could ever experience on this planet. It was total, man, it was just, there's no strings attached to the love of the Creator. It's like, I know that they teach this in Christianity, and that you don't have to do good works and whatnot to go to heaven, but with this, it was just taken a step further, because it removed all of the human ideology that we have here on what's right and what's wrong. And it's like, there was no judgment there. There was only love and acceptance, and a feeling of connectedness to everything and everyone. So, I mean, I'll continue to tell this to everyone that I meet that wants to know about it. I'll continue to educate people to the best of my ability on how to learn more about this stuff and how to kind of improve their lives in their own spiritual path. But it's really not something that is palatable to a lot of people, and it's not something that you can shove down people's throats, because the more and more I tell these things to people, the crazier looks I get. Well, maybe it could even be my perception. Maybe people are taking this stuff in and absorbing it more than I'm giving credit to myself. But it's just the whole thing of belief is just my feeling of belief, and my concept of that has kind of been taken to a next level with my hypnosis and my spiritual awakening since 2012. And rather than just having faith, like, I know now, like, I don't hope and I don't believe, like, I know in my heart at least. And I mean, it's not something I can give to someone else and say, like, if I give this knowledge to you, you will know. Like, it's something you have to experience. It's one of those things that you have to experience on your own to absolutely know for sure what you will know once you experience it. So, and then of course when I was talking to this gentleman from Yemen earlier. And I talk to this dude all the time. He's a good dude. So I'm talking to him about like these ascended masters in Christ and Buddha, Muhammad, all the different kind of prophets of, or the known prophets of our age. And I'm like, they all had, whether or not you believe in their religion, whether or not you follow them, they all had a mission coming here to Earth. And they all had lessons that they were trying to teach humanity. And unfortunately, a lot of those lessons have been twisted and perverted and kind of used in like the third dimensional dynamic in the planetary power struggle between, you know, like a lot of these elite people that want to stay in power, and then like the normal middle class and poor people that are, you know, struggling to get by, that have, or they think they have no say in the world and that they have no power and that they can't change things. But I guess what I'm kind of getting at, lots of fun spiritual things going on right now. The whole rock bottom thing. So I know I went off on a tangent earlier because I was talking about John Coltrane, which is the jazz musician. And so this guy got into drugs, and eventually he found himself at the bottom of rock bottom, and there was no way to go but up. And that is when he had his spiritual awakening, and it kind of altered his music forever. And he kind of pioneered something called free jazz, which is really jazz without limits. So the first time you hear some of his music, especially, there's a song called, man, I'm gonna have to look up the name of that song and put it in here. So this song that he wrote, it almost sounds like, if you're not really kind of paying attention to who's playing and what's going on in the group, you would think that a whole bunch of middle school kids got together in the music room and they just started making racket, like, and maybe like once in a while there's a couple good soloists in there that would throw in some good tunes, but it's really like all these instruments just blasted into this one piece of music that lasts for like 40 minutes. So it's kind of something you need to take a seat and listen to, and kind of block out a section of time so that you can completely appreciate his work for what it is. And my jazz professor, he went off on this kind of questioning thing to the whole class, and he said, like, there are people in modern day times there's some people out there that will say or claim that I am the incarnation of Christ, and people will immediately question them and try to figure out, like, why are they saying this, and this isn't right, and like they will immediately condemn it, or they will be very apprehensive to believe something of that magnitude when someone from just a normal person from any, you know, small town in the world just comes out and says that people tend to be very skeptical. And it's like with John Coltrane, he said that he had this spiritual awakening and he was able to quit heroin cold turkey. So people can come up with their conclusions as to what really happened, but I would encourage people to be less judgmental towards others and to be more open-minded. And that goes for all these religions, because for me personally, God or the source or me or whoever put me here, whoever decided that I was going to live this life, they had a reason for me to be here, or I had a reason for me to be here, to learn these lessons that I've kind of been given the opportunity to learn in this human form. And I think people would really be surprised if they would just accept, or not accept, but just kind of open themselves to some stuff outside of the norm. As I look at my clock and it says 3:33. Great. So I was just checking the time to see if the kids were gonna be home. But clearly they'll be home here in a few minutes, or they should have been already, but I checked the clock and it's 3:33. Yeah, so this dude, John Coltrane, he was able to quit heroin. He dedicated his life to music, and and he was able to, you know, become one of the most famous, prominent jazz musicians of all time in the United States, like, of everyone, all the jazz musicians. So, I guess my point of this video is open-mindedness. If your mind is not open to these things already, I would just encourage you to look around a little bit more, observe a little bit more, react a little bit less, and be a little bit more grateful. And I'm gonna get off of here and do some homework, and namaste.